go. Oh. Right, well, that should do for that. So thank you so much for coming along to tonight's Knots IoT. Before we get going, we do have a code of conduct, and that is a lot of words there, but essentially just be nice to each other. We do take this quite seriously. So if you feel as though anybody is breaking that code of conduct, then the best way to start the process of remedying that is to send me a direct message in the Zoom chat. And then we'll guide you through the process of making sure that that's remedied for you. So just be generally nice to each other. It should be easy. So thanks for that. Moving on, our sponsors for tonight are PJG Creations, Tech Nottingham, JetBrains and Calyx. Calyx are a relatively new sponsor, and actually after this call I'll be asking Laurent to select a little piece of IoT kit, and we'll get that sent out by Calyx. We're actually still in the process of sorting that, so somebody won the last prize at the last meetup we did, and we've not managed to send that out, so apologies for that, but that is coming. We're just sorting out issues with getting money transferred between places and stuff like that, stuff behind the scenes. So yeah, so that'll be coming, and then JetBrains, Tech Nottingham and PJG Creations as well. Tech Nottingham, they're a fantastic Nottingham based but now global community. They've got a Slack space that you can go and join there at that link, technottingham.com/join, and they've got channels in there for everything from gardening through PHP to counting up in hex, if that's what floats your boat. So it'd be worth going along and checking them out. JetBrains, they're sponsoring us one of their fabulous products. If you don't know who JetBrains are, they make developer tools for developers. So everything from IntelliJ to ReSharper and PHP Storm, WebStorm. Yeah, so if you tweet on the hashtag NotsIoT tonight, then somebody will be selected at random to win a single product from JetBrains. So yeah, get tweeting on that. Likewise, as I mentioned, Calyx, they're sponsoring us a single piece of IoT tech. And again, that same hashtag NotsIoT, and somebody will win a piece of IoT tech as well. So go ahead and do that too. So thanks to Calyx. If you'd like to find a bit more information out about being a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional MVP, I'm an MVP myself, so I'm more than happy to speak to you about what that process is and how you can get involved in that program. It's a really great program, and the community of folks in there are awesome. So yeah, get in touch if you want to find out about that. Tonight we've got Laurent Ellerbach talking about his Internet of Things journey, and I've had a look through the slides, and geez, yeah, that journey is awesome. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that. So in a little minute we'll get going with Laurent's talk. Coming up, oh look, I've not fixed that slide. Actually, that's a good point. Essentially, we're taking a break for a couple of months. I'm going to be away for next month's meetup slot, and then it's the summer. For July and August, so we'll be back in September with our next speaker, and I've been speaking to a few speakers, and I just need to confirm some dates. So keep your eye on Twitter, and we'll update you, or you'll get the notification on Meetup when I schedule it there. So that's what that is. Coming up at the end of this month, or almost the end of this month, and in fact it's a week on Monday, I think, we've got the awesome Steve Collins coming along to .NET Knots to talk about the source code generation game. So a talk on source code generation should be quite an interesting talk, and Steve's an awesome guy, so I'm looking forward to that one. Myself and another guy from Microsoft, Chris Reddington, will be doing a webinar through my company that I work for, Octopus Deploy, on CI/CD with GitHub Actions and Octopus Deploy, and that's coming up next Wednesday. So do tune in. That'll be at every different time zone, so you can tune into that and learn a little bit about GitHub Actions there. Also, of course, it's Build in a couple of weeks' time, so definitely tune in to that. And there's a UK community day happening as well, so there's going to be some special UK content for the first time ever, so tune in. That's going to be on the 25th of May, so that particular day, so yeah, tune into that. If professional IoT is what you're interested in, then a great way to start is to start passing the Microsoft AZ220 IoT Developer Speciality certification. I helped actually create that exam along with a few folks from Microsoft and some other IoT engineers. And then onwards from that, I've helped create a heap of IoT content on Pluralsight to help you pass that particular exam as well. So if you're interested in leveling up your career in IoT, then by all means go and check that particular course out. Coming back soon, myself, Cliff Aegis, and Maria Anastasia Mustaka will be returning to IoT Live as well, our weekly IoT news show. So keep your eyes open for that. And if DevOps or Agile Engineering is your thing, then myself and some other fabulous hosts are part of the Agile Engineering podcast, and we're on all major platforms. So with that, a bit of self-promotion out of the way, I'll let you do the interesting thing and listen to Laurent's awesome talk. So I'll pass you over to him. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Pete. I'm sharing the screen now. Let me know if that works.
Let's see. Yep, that looks good to me.
Good, then let me open as well a chat, so I will have it ready if anyone has a question, and you can interrupt me at any time. Okay, so really state my name, Laurent Ellerbach. I'm working for Microsoft now for 25 years, so quite a long journey as well at Microsoft. And I'm a principal software engineering manager, managing a team of software engineering, and I'm doing co-engineering with our largest customers and partners in the world. And it's all about Azure, and I guess you bet it's Azure as well, right? So that's what I'm doing daily, a lot of projects, a lot of engagements around the IoT. And I'm passionate about IoT even before it was called IoT. And I became, over time, one of the maintainers of .NET nanoFramework. I'll explain a little bit later what it is, and .NET IoT as well. And first, I'll start then going through a couple of slides on that. I've been always sharing things, even before things were called OSS, even before we had repositories and so on and so on. I have an old stuff, which is like an old blog, which I've sanitized like not that long ago. And for the new stuff, everything is available on my GitHub. And of course, on .NET IoT and .NET nanoFramework, there are a couple of links later on. But my IoT journey started like very long time ago. And I will share part of it starting like 10 years ago, when it was interesting to connect to the internet. And why to connect to the internet? Well, I really like this definition of Gartner. It's an old one, but this is like, it is a network of physical objects that contain embedded technology to communicate and interact with their internal state or their external environment. And this is where you really understand the power of the I in IoT and the fact that there is a T as well. So it's an object connected. And then the important part as well is that it has an impact on their own state, so they can adjust themselves or have an action on their environment. Okay, and that's what is interesting. I'll use as well a framework moving forward in my journey, where I will look at things like the devices, the cloud infrastructure, the data analysis, insight. We look at all of that in my journey. I've been doing some cool stuff. I've been learning a lot of things, and there are stuff which were a bit weird in the journey. We'll see all of that. And I've been using a lot of tools, but mainly Azure, and Azure, of course, but not only. .NET, but not only. Of course, .NET nanoFramework, .NET IoT, but things with Arduino as well, especially at the beginning, like 10 years ago. I've been using Visual Studio mainly, and VS Code, of course, but the main tools are really about Azure, .NET, and Visual Studio in general. So back like almost 10 years ago, I said to myself, like when I was coming back from vacation, my garden was looking either as a swamp, either as a desert, like literally totally burned. I said, like, come on, I should be able to do something, right? Back 10 years ago, you had something called .NET micro-framework. And it was just wonderful. It was like running .NET on a stuff like looks like an Arduino, like slightly more powerful than an Arduino. but with compatible stuff, SD cards, connection to the network, like something really mind-blowing. And I fell in love with that. I had as well water in my garden. And I had a few existing sensors, like those Oregon Scientific sensors, which are, using just regular 433 megahertz communication, not protected, like easy to hack stuff like that. And few Arduino at that time, like at Mega 328, like really the core part of that. And somehow I started this connection to the cloud journey with that. And I came up with something that is, like I said, a V1 of the architecture, like quite simple. I had Spark.io, equivalent of an Arduino at that time, but with a Wi-Fi connection and ability to connect to the cloud and to Azure, like a 433 megahertz receiver. I built some of my own sensor. You'll see that later on. And I created a simple sprinkler system based on the .NET micro framework board, all connected with REST API to the Azure mobile services, still existing today, by the way, still can use that, a SQL Server database, and a very boring website made in ASP.NET. I mean, like, I'm not a designer, clearly. I know why I don't like to build a web application. But I managed to integrate like a full chain of IoT. Azure IoT was not existing at that time, by the way. I mean, keep that in mind. It was like no offer at all for all those things. So it was all about using some of the existing Microsoft services. Later on, things move forward. You had like Event Hub that arrived, and still early ages for Azure IoT, self-connected mode sensors. I've used the gateway. Again, I'll go back in some of the journey. I've still had the sprinkler system using micro framework, and I've been using more services, and I've tried to use machine learning, and I've tried to use infrastructure as code deployment and having better UI, stuff like that. I'll come back as well to some of those experiments later on. That's just to give you an idea of the journey. Then 2018, big simplification. You've seen a lot of things have disappeared from here. I've added Azure IoT Hub in the picture, and I've been deploying still a lot of more sensor, more things like that. Some migration to the board here. So now that was running a Raspberry Pi with Linux connected with Azure IoT. There's been an intermediate version as well. I'll come back to that later on. New kind of UI for that, and I've removed all the UI. I'm just using a bot. That was, at that time, like bots were big things, like 5, 6 years, 7 years ago, and it's still very interesting. And I'll illustrate that later on. The version I have now has evolved again. You still have like the core part of there that hasn't changed much in terms of services. The data flowing has been changing. I've been updating this part as well, the sprinkler. I've added something like called Home Assistant to have like a representation of my data, and before sending them to the cloud, I intercept them in an Home Assistant. Again, I will show a few things. You see this lovely icon, which is the .NET nanoFramework one. So I've been migrating most, but not all, of my sensors in .NET nanoFramework. And I've been migrating all what I can running on a Raspberry Pi or equivalent on .NET IoT. So anything that does not run on an MCU, so run on a CPU, is using .NET IoT, using Azure IoT Edge for the deployment, and so on and so on. And the UI here have been changed drastically, as you can see as well. Still not a designer, but getting better using ASP.NET, I guess. So that was in short some of the elements, architecture evolution, stuff like that. We'll go back into some of the elements and step by step on the journey and focusing on some of the things. So very early stage, very early days. I've been using Spark.io. Those devices still exist. They are based on simple Texas Instrument processors that have basically a Wi-Fi chip, and it does allow you to connect their cloud or to any other cloud. So I decided, of course, to connect to Azure. They are quite nice in terms of the way that you can do over-the-air updates with their own framework. It's working quite well, but everything on their tools is in their cloud. Everything is online. So I'm still using that one because I've used that one. It's still working. I haven't changed any. Well, I've changed a few lines of code because then I wanted to integrate that to my MQTT server at home. But all up, this is still working. Still, getting the temperature, humidity from that, and still posting on Azure. Still posting now internally on my stuff. And I've been designing my own components based on that Mega 328. It's basically a simple 8-bit microprocessor. You can use the Arduino for that, working quite well, quite simple. And I've been doing the same for a simple rain, wind, and wind speed, wind direction sensor. So kind of weather station. I've redeveloped that myself for fun. I mean, and to learn. This is the example of all what you need if you want to create your own weather station with an Arduino, very simple. Still, you need to connect that somewhere because just like that, it doesn't do anything. So the idea is to be able to connect this one in a serial port to something a bit bigger to be able to do the treatment. And in that case, it's a Raspberry Pi. I mean, in this implementation here, it was using, the RFID. Later on, I've replaced the RFID with a serial port connecting to a Raspberry Pi. But you'll see picture of that and how it looks like. And it was actually quite cool, quite interesting to build my own hardware, fully. At the end of the day, you realize that electronic is quite easy. Still, you need a couple of basics, how you can, for example, switch on and off an emitter, so using transistor, analogic input, digital stuff like that. So quite a lot of learnings. Now, of course, I would do that with the nanoFramework, but same stuff. It's still existing, still in the garden. It's still working for the last, I don't know, many years. Again, the only update I've done is at some point I removed this part and connected to a Raspberry Pi. This is exactly how this first prototype looked like. So, I mean, really prototype, like you cannot imagine more prototype. It stays like that in my main room for some time. And at that point, my ex-wife told me, what's this stuff? Why is it there? And I said, well, I just put it outside. And then that's what I did, literally. So, bought those cheap solar panel, battery, charger, literally move all those things in a box, put that outside, and it actually worked decently over the summer. Over the winter, not that decently because of the lack of sun. But yeah, it worked. And it was good to discover how to manage battery as well and all those elements. The receiver for this sensor and for the other existing sensor looks like that. It's still there. It's still in my main room. It doesn't move. I mean, it's all good. What the interesting with people using 443 megahertz and just one way is that usually it's not scripted. It's nothing. So you can just sniff the air. And if your neighbor have the same sensors, then you can receive them as well, building your own receiver, which that's what happened to me. It was quite cool. I haven't touched that for 4 years. In 2017, I did an update to connect the data as well to my MQTT. I said I really added some Home Assistant and some things like that. First without Home Assistant, then Home Assistant, but still working like a charm. Very impressed by this device. A bit later, my youngest kid told me, we started to like gardening and said, we should buy a greenhouse. I said, why do you want to buy a greenhouse? And he says, to have things growing in winter. I said, no, just I'm stupid. Yes, sure. Let's buy a greenhouse. More opportunity to test stuff. And in there, I said to myself, okay, last time the wireless stuff was okay, but it's a bit of a pain in the winter. So, and you can see that the sensors are still here in the garden. Like it's no joke. I mean, like I had few ones like this one to measure the air. I mean the soil humidity, but as well the air temperature and so on. And I waited just a little bit, and then I moved to something more connected. So I took one of those Raspberry Pi, I think like 0 or something, 1. I mean, like one of those old ones. Anyway, Raspberry Pi 1, sorry. And I built my own hardware, so it's the same as the previous hardware that you've seen. Just that rather than sending the data over the air, it would connect with serial port, and same kind of sensor, same kind of things, same connection, same everything. Just a bit more professional. You don't see the breastboard anyway. It's just all soldered like that. And honestly, it's still in the garden, still working. This part has evolved a bit, like the Raspberry Pi stuff. It's not a mono anymore. Now it's a real Raspberry Pi running .NET Core with .NET IoT in containers, deployed with Azure IoT. I'll go back on that. But for the rest, still same stuff. Nice box, electricity this time coming here, taking to the garage, the sensor here. Nice salad, by the way. You can see that on fly. And then just like a box to put all of that inside. The board, the Raspberry Pi was not connected directly to Azure. It went to my Windows gateway, send the data there, and then the gateway ultimately push the data to Azure. The reason is that, again, at this time there is not like much support for .NET. I just wanted to run something .NET quickly on that, and that was it on my side. I've shown you some of the devices and explain you already like some of the elements on cloud. So maybe time to move a little bit on the cloud side and the connectivity and what you can do in there. So again, in the V1, no Azure IoT Hub, no Event Hub, like nothing. You had like very basic stuff at that time, like 10 years ago. I mean, very basic, very advanced still, but not as advanced as today. So I use the Azure Mobile Services to store the data. I mean, it doesn't cost anything if you are not using them much. So it's perfect for my usage, sending few data, REST-based. I mean, easy to use. The only thing you need is an IP stack. And this is most likely the only service which still works even if you're not using TLS. So even if you're using a simple HTTP connection. So it does a job for those low-end devices with basically no way of doing TLS at that time. So no way of having anything secure. And REST API is very simple. I mean, like, and the way you can post on the table is just a post. You give the name of the table, HTTP. You give like your application key, the host name, and the content, your JSON, and bam. Okay, the answer is much longer than what you're sending, but okay. Just give you the answer and what you send. There is an option to get the data that you send and to get a bit shorter, but in short, that's about it. So very easy. That's text, that's HTTP, nothing complicated. Like even if you have a low-level API, everyone can do that. That's the things that you even learn at school. So that should be all good. That's again some Arduino code on how to do that. Nothing very complicated. I mean, even today, that's code like 10 years ago, like literally, like I haven't changed that. So even today, I think you even have API or whatever. I mean, like SDKs or equivalent to make it. But if you just want to make one code like that, just don't bother. Like make it simple. JSON, don't go for JSON class. Like if you have one thing to serialize, make it simple, create your string, good to go. It's light, easy, simple, and it doesn't just work like you have the Azure IP and voila, that's it. That was it, okay? First connection. So bottom line, it's easy. And even all what you have today is not more complicated than that. The protocol may be slightly more complicated with MQTT, whatever, but all up, it gets to connecting to a socket, sending something over a socket in some ways. HTTP is quite verbose, it's text. If you have a protocol like MQTT, it's slightly different, but in short, it's about that. At that very early stage, was just using HTTP to post data, not very secure, not very good, not whatever, but I mean, at that time, those MCUs were not able to handle that. And that's one of the reasons why I move away from all those small sensors, except one I still keep in there. Just, I mean, I want to see how long as well the service will work and my data are going to flow. And that's important in IoT. So I've been moving everything to mainly, almost everything to mainly .NET nanoFramework and ESP32s. Few reasons is ESP32s are quite cheap. You have TLS, you have support for Wi-Fi, you have all really what you need to make things quite interesting. And why .NET nanoFramework is because I love .NET and I love nanoFramework. So having the ability to write .NET code, C# code, debug the code, having all the MQTT classes, the connection to Wi-Fi, I mean, like all the goodness that you can have with C# on a small microprocessor, it's just pure love. And yeah, I mean, I'm really, really in love with .NET nanoFramework up to the point I become one of the main maintainers of .NET nanoFramework. The sensors, everything that you do that is not using a secure communication, you can spoof everything. So in terms of IoT, always secure, always do some crypto, always find a way not to have the data being sent not encrypted. Like all those sensors, like the cheap one you can find on 433, just crap. Like because none is really secure at all. None is using a secure protocol. Yeah, get rid of all of that and do something serious. I mean, I guess it's the temperature from, I mean, everyone has those kind of sensors at home, like few temperature, stuff like that. That's okay. I mean, those are not critical, but if you want to move to critical things, get rid of all that. You have plugs at home on 433. Anyone can really spoof them. Just have to sniff the air, look at the packet, replay, and boom. Move to security, move to secure protocol, move to encrypting things. Use gateway if you don't have anything secure and it's on cable. But keep in mind that if you have a physical access, that's not secure. You can always, go to it. So I've been moving everything to basically Azure IoT when it comes to the devices. Some are not fully connected to Azure IoT, but in this case, it's using MQTT with some security on it on my own network, which decrease the risk anyway. But keep that in mind, it's super important. It's the first mistake you do in IoT. It's not thinking of it's not being paranoid on what can happen to your device and your connection. And again, if you use the nanoFramework, you have certificates, you have like just all the goodness of the security things, and you can connect with Azure IoT. There is a lib, it's fully done transparently, no brainer. Same for MQTT, so no excuse not to use anything secure for those devices. Later on, again, the Azure IoT was not existing. You had event hubs, which bring a lot of goodness at the time, because you can connect like basically millions of devices in an IoT scenario in something that will scale and just work. It's one of the most reliable service that is on Azure. It's just working. There is a lot of protocols supported. You have MQP, HTTPS, MQTT as well. I can add this one here. You have a lot of native client lib for that. For a lot of platforms, so it's a good way to ingest data. Later on with Azure IoT, you have more goodness coming, which means like managing devices, being able to provision them, and so on and so on. But this is already quite good, depending on your needs. Azure IoT Hub, I mentioned that this is an old screen capture. Like now the service has been much more increased, but Azure IoT Hub will really allow you, on top of ingesting the data, manage the devices, and that makes a difference. And as well, bring a few more things that I will explain later on, like the ability to deploy on larger devices like Raspberry Pi or a gateway your workloads. and that makes a difference. So I've slightly upgraded. In the meantime, let's go back a bit to the device, my Raspberry Pi, to a Raspberry Pi V2. And this time I really use the ability to connect to Azure IoT Hub. Deploying the workloads to read my weather station. And as well, I've added a camera. So you can see it's an old Microsoft camera, like the very old one, but it was supported by the Raspberry Pi. And I know that I can put that one in water. It was all okay. Time to clean a bit for the ants. I mean, you can see those people having garden. You can see and recognize ants in there. It's very classical ones. And there I say like, okay, at that time I said like, well, we'll try something different. So let's try to have like this application wrote in Node.js. Why not? Because, you know, Node was quite starting to be like those things. So I said, okay, I don't want to be dummy. Let's do it with Node. Spoiler alert, I've migrated that one as well to .NET IoT later on. So the core idea was to have like the Azure IoT Hub to be able from an application. Keep in mind, I like boats. So from a boat, for example, sending a message saying, hey, I want to get a picture. Then the container that is deployed and running on my Raspberry Pi will pick up the message. In this case, the Node.js application will take a picture, upload the picture in Azure Blob Storage, and send the acknowledgements. I don't remember why you have the SC code. Oh, Blob Storage, yes, of course, I was posting the picture to Blob Storage. Yeah, that's about it. Sending back the acknowledgement, and then you receive that the picture has been sent. You can send data as well. There are other applications I've been developing in my garden or whatever, where I send as well the data that goes to storage or that can go to an event hub. So that was it. The good news with Azure IoT Hub is that you really have SDK for almost anything, and otherwise the documentation is quite clean. I've been writing a full library for the .NET nanoFramework to connect as a device, to receive the message, to be able to do all of that. I can tell you, I only based on the documentation, the MQTT doc, very clear, very simple, straightforward, very nice. So it looked like that in the garden. So you can see the old Microsoft webcam. You can see the box behind. You can see the humidity sensor here. This is a sprinkler stuff, huh? And this is how it looks like on the other side. At that time, I removed this feature now, but the code is still available. So if you want to have a look at the code, it's still available on my GitHub archive, I think, for that one. What I did later on is I played as well with those ESP8266. They were quite cool at that time. Same stuff. It's kind of, you know, small Arduino, but still with capacity to connect to and do TLS, connect to Wi-Fi. So I said like, okay, I'll put one of those ones in the garden, connected as well to Azure IoT Hub, and in parallel of the Raspberry Pi. So really not working on that. In the parallel, so I was tired of having this Node.js application. We had .NET IoT coming and was there already, a few things with the camera. And then I was able to run as well full things on a container deployed with Azure at the edge with all the goodness of .NET and .NET IoT. I still haven't updated that. Sometimes there are a couple of edge cases, and I should update that with the last version of .NET IoT because we fixed those elements from the camera and the capture and stuff like that. But still, you know, very decently working. Let's have a little look at the data and what we can do with the data. Somehow, data analytics. Remember the definition. So it's a network of objects that connects and then can have an impact on themselves or environment. You don't do that if somehow you don't have data and you don't store the data. So in there, the idea is to be able to have some simple data analytics. Originally, the idea was to use then a website, but Excel as well, and to do simple data manipulation. And now I really migrated to have Home Assistant as a front end. Some of the data flow in parallel. Some goes directly to Azure, getting stored for a long time and do more analysis on that. I'll come back to that. And some in parallel goes to Home Assistant to have real time. I mean, it doesn't cost much for me to put them on both sides. So if I look at the last architecture, and if you want to look at it, what has changed from the previous one, and now it's like almost everything is connected with MQTT to Azure Event Hub. It's using on the back, Azure IoT Hub, it's using on the back Event Hub, Humanetics, things like that. Things are still storing Azure, SQL Azure. I should add Blob as well. I have Blob storage as well for some of the data. I have a way to connect directly to my web app with the boat. And I have like all those, a lot of sensor migrated to .NET nanoFramework. Again, I kept few with other elements just because as well I want to understand, how much it will continue to work with those sensors. So very first things I was doing is using Excel. I mean, why not? You can connect Excel to a SQL database. I was posting those wind data. I mean, you see the weather station. Those are actually the real data. I mean, like from 2014. No joke. 2014, July 2014. So yeah, so I was doing that for development purpose. It's very easy. You just can check your data. Okay, you refresh, you get that. You can make your graph. You can filter the date you want, whatever. So it makes things quite easy. But at some point, it starts to be limited. So you can use that to play a little bit at that point. So the website experience, not my best experiences, honestly. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. With the V1, I try to make the graph, same stuff, but it's slow. You have to pull the data. I'm not a web expert, but you still can do cool stuff. And I was able, to see like really the wind, the direction, like those are the direction. I mean, everything was there, and give the temperature of all the sensor. You can see like in there, it's a bit smallish, but yeah, 2014 as well, December in that moment. Later on, I've been having a couple of cooler stuff in there by integrating as well a sprinkler and trying to have it nicer. I mean, going from that design to that design, all deploy using Cordova and this kind of technology. And I was like, same stuff, not really what I wanted, too complex. I'm not a web developer. I don't like that. And then I gave up on those representations. So that's about it. Still on the data side, I've been using stream analytics, being able to transform data, do some averaging. You've seen on a previous slide that you have like, or even like here, it's more visible. Like you have like the raw data, like it's always like moving a lot, and then you can smooth them, etc. The average wind, average direction, and things like that. So for those ones, you can use, for example, Streamlink. So I've been playing with that. There is still one working, and it's very nice. It really looks like that. It's a bit like SQL Server, and you can transform the data. I mean, in this case, it's like almost nothing to transform. It's just like about putting that in the same table, the same format as another table. What is interesting as well is the monitoring you have in there. Like here, I realized that I had errors, like a runtime error, time to time, which guess why? Well, I figured it out thanks to the monitoring. Otherwise, I would not have figured it out. So you have a lot of cool stuff in there. It does allow as well to stream directly, for example, now in Power BI. So you can have a live dashboard with all those data flowing regularly. Depending on what you do, that really can scale nicely, and you can use it for any kind of IoT project if you have to transform things. I mean, in this case, it's a bit limited, but still, it's not much more complicated than that. And you have like, again, high-level elements that allow you to make averaging, windowing, and anomaly detection, stuff like that. My 2 days experience looks much more like that. So I haven't been developing anything. I've just been reusing Home Assistant and integrating components. Some of the sensors are still the one I've been developing. Some of the other, I mean, you see the webcam here, so it's integrated in there. It's still the same webcam and it's still the same greenhouse. Just summer, I removed the cover, the roof. I have a lot of things from my house as well integrated, things which are like market products, like some Z-Wave elements, like the heating system is from Netatmo. So I mix actually things that sensors have been doing myself with a sensor from the market, all in the same place so that I can have nice graphical representation. And I have quite a lot of things. So I have Zigbee, Z-Wave, I have Wi-Fi things, and I have my own stuff. The thing here, the important point is that a lot of them are connected to my MQTT server. So I use that as a hub, and it's really cool because it does allow you, especially if you have a lot of things you want to connect at home, to make it simple, to have just one system for everything you will develop yourself. It's easy to integrate. I mean, some of those plugins as well, like some of those elements, they have a native MQTT server as well. They can connect to your Wi-Fi and post that. Some of those Zigbee elements, I mean, the gateway, not the sensor themselves, the gateway, so Zigbee gateway. So you can take advantage of all of that. If we move a bit forward, this is how you can consume the data, represent the data, somehow consume them. But at some point, you say like, I'd like to get some insight, right? Like making things automatically, and why not, having more intelligence? Okay. In my case, I had like all the humidity information. I had like my sprinkler. I somehow know when I was sprinkling or not. And I decided at some point, like, maybe I should use some machine learning, right? Seems cool. I give the weather prediction, I give the humidity, and then it will predict when I need to sprinkle. Good idea. Not my best move neither. Few reasons for that. And I think I have the model here, so I will discuss a bit about that. First thing, I didn't track when I was sprinkling. Seems stupid, right? Well, then I say, but look, I have the weather conditions from that day, so I know if it's been sprinkling or not. So if I see a rise in humidity in the ground for a day where it was not raining, then I was sprinkling. So I recreated data like that, created the model, kind of trained the model with all the humidity elements and everything. Still, the results were not that great, like literally not that great. I had like percentage from like 40 something to 60 something, like far to something like, yeah, I really should sprinkle or not. And the reason is the data quality. So if you want to go for those kind of approach using machine learning, AI, and all those advanced elements, have clean data. Think about all the data you can get since the beginning. Keep them clean, because it's not because you have data that they are clean. The humidity one, you've seen like they are. So you may have to clean them. You may have to use them in a different way. But all up, you can get something if you have the clean data. And all up, it's extremely easy to use. It's like 2 API that are provided, and you are good to go. So very, very easy to do that. But in my case, big fail, because unfortunately the data, I mean, since I'm capturing the right data for my sprinkler system, but at that time I did not. And it was in 2015, long time ago as well. I mean, you see, like all those things that I've been doing, all those experiments are long ago, and I've been learning since that time. I've been using Power BI, still using Power BI to have a global and aggregated view of some of the temperature, humidity. It's nice to see something in a year. It's hard to do that with basically Home Assistant as well. So get more training and ability to really create dashboard and you can really give any kind of data. You can have as well, like as I said before, you can use data from an event hub that push directly to Power BI so that you can have like real data and adjusting data. So this is just an example of doing that. I mean, I've been doing that in 2018 or so, like when I was doing that, but I'm still using it in for some of the sensors and some of the elements. I've been using a bot. I said time to use as well and to look at that. So we have a bot framework at Microsoft called Microsoft Bot Framework. Very surprising for the branding. Very simple. Works perfectly. I'm still using my bot. I have it connected to different channels. I have email. I can send an email to my bot. That's cool. But as well, I have Skype, even if it's not used much. Telegram, and I have the direct line as well that I can use at home. What's really cool with that is that you get rid of the UI, which I hated. I mean, you understand that it's not my stuff, and you can really focus on what is quite cool and interesting. It's really fully REST API. Still, when you build a flow, you have to be smart. And the other thing is I'm using as well Luis. Which is Language Understanding Intelligence Service from Microsoft, Azure Luis. Hey, good, huh? See, I managed to remember the full name for the recognition, because I will give a sentence, I mean an order somehow to the bot, and the bot will have to understand that. And I'm using this service for that one. Works perfectly. So here, for example, it was when I was having the picture and wanted to have the picture, but this is not connected anymore. I'm using something else for it now. So example with an email, because why not? I mean, you can use both for email. So I send an email to the specific email address with an order, send me a picture of my garden. This will go to the bot provider. It will handle the mail. It will then go to the bot service. The bot service will use Luis, language understanding, to be able to understand what I want. In this case, the intent is to send a picture, and I have a parameter. It's the location is the garden, because I may have multiple webcams in different places having this same implementation, right? And then the bot will then send a message like we've seen previously to Azure IoT Hub, which will send it. I mean, technically, it's the container here running Node.js, but now it's .NET IoT. It doesn't really matter posting that, sending back the URL to the blob storage. The message go back with the confirmation. That goes back to the bot service. That goes back here. When I was doing those live demos, this takes like an instant. It's very quick, and you have all of that happening like very, very fast. So you type, and then a second later you have your URL. And when you think about that, this is amazing, like really amazing, because like you really send something, it goes there, you have like all those steps, it's using HTTP, it goes over the network, etc. So very magic. I love both for that. Very easy to integrate a lot of things. Very easy to integrate with Azure IoT Hub, the capacity to send message, receive message, to really discuss and interact with objects, and with object at scale. I mean, here I have one, but I can have, again, 20 or 40 or 1,000 different files. And then, okay, I receive back the mail and with the URL and stuff. And of course, the picture. I've slightly adjusted the process, but originally, this is how it looks like in 2015 still, like quite some time ago. Then, yeah, this is how it looks like in Skype, same in Telegram. You can as well like use automatic translation. That's very cool. So works nicely as well. There are a couple of hidden features in those boats. And I have many more things integrated in the boat. I have things with the sprinkler. Maybe I have a screen capture as well, and a few more things. I really use that a lot. The sprinkler. Oh, it's a project I started like a long time ago. I mean, like, this is a .NET Macro Framework board, long time ago. And what I really wanted to do is yeah, just being able to pilot remotely, manually creating programs, and that was it. And I used because at that time, like, yeah, I was not doing too much of electronic. I just used programmable automate. And later on, I've replaced that with my own electronic because it was more fun. So they just basically use the GPIOs and pilot that with the GPIOs, and that was it. Like it's just basically an open collector, and that's it. So, or like a relay if you want, same stuff. I've migrated that a bit later on to Raspberry Pi 2. Yeah, running Windows IoT Core. Yeah, I've tried that. And I've ported my .NET Macro Framework code to basically C# running for this one with UWP. I've created my own UWP server. I've posted that. It was quite popular because I was one of the first one to use that. And some people used it as well for other things. It was somehow some simplicity with a modern kind of development. Still, I liked the integrated way of .NET Macro Framework, to be honest. And I added something important, the connection to Azure IoT. Very important, which I would have been more complicated to do at that time with .NET Macro Framework, honestly. And what I did here was just natively so far in there, not there yet with IoT Edge. So natively and being able to communicate. And migrating that, then you can see I've removed the automate, changed a bit the hardware. And this time I've added a few more things. I've added predictions and smart choices for the sprinkler. So it's not ML, but it's just based on rules. So I have a service where I get the weather condition, the past one, and the expected one. And then I have my rules. It's like how much time I want to run every single way. I mean, every single sprinkler for a specific temperature. So for example, if the temperature is every day between 20 and 30 degrees, we're speaking about Celsius here. How much time do I sprinkle? And if it's been raining the day before, do I need to do it? Yes or no? So all those rules. So it's a rule based. By the way, all the code is available on my GitHub for that one, with everything in there. Then you see, like, between the V3 and V4, few things changes. Not the hardware, still the same, but this time I moved to Raspbian. I moved like all my Raspberry Pi, all my stuff like that using Raspbian. I've moved everything to Azure IoT Edge for the deployment, moved everything in containers, everything in managed centrally, and it's pure love. So I move all the management there, all the code in a container with .NET IoT. I still have the prediction and the rest. In the garden, then you may wonder what is there. I mean, like water, of course. 24-volt electrovalve. They look like that. I mean, they cost few euros, pounds, or whatever you want. And like really like some sprinkling on that side. I used to live before the war as well in Moscow time to time for personal reasons. So I did not have a huge garden, just a balcony. But I use the same system in there with a 5-liter bottle that can give me about 10-ish days of autonomy for sprinkling. Not that bad. 5-volt motor in there, same principle. Here you can see as well an ESP, like for the garden, like to have like additional temperature and humidity things. And exact same code, exact same stuff, exact same everything. The authentication is centralized, same user to manage all the sprinkler. I have more than that, like now in my family, like everywhere. So I have like a galaxy of sprinkler. Everything is connected to Azure. Everything is backed up on Azure as well. All these trees backed up there. They can work fully autonomous if there is no connection. Few hacks to make that working, and that's about it. And they are all accessible from the boat, so I can ask the boats. Just a bit of web programming. This, to give you an idea, this is how the interface looked like when I was in Arduino. I mean, more than 10 years ago. Yeah, quite a nice challenge to have something like looks still okay, right? And it was simple but very straightforward interface. When I moved to more power, then I was able to use, of course, more fancy stuff. Still quite easy, still quite simple. Still not a web developer, but still, I mean, with the provision and the rest, I was able to do some cool stuff as well like that. Moving forward, more power, more ASP.NET, more stuff, more whatever. Still not a designer, but at least it starts to look like more like a real web application with weather forecast, with the possibility to really tune your automation, the threshold, the data, the rest. And as well, like everything is, of course, in the previous version, I used an API key, for the authentication using HTTPS, but just an API key. And now I can have profile. So I can have, because I have a galaxy of them, I'm mean, of course, but my mother was as well like one of those sprinklers in the garden. She does not really need to access all the parameters, right? So she can program, but she cannot delete. She cannot edit the typical stuff like, it's like more, she can just program it and enjoy the programming and adjusting as well those things. So I mean, I took advantage of being able to write those stuff in a way more. Does it really work? Yeah, it does really work. Yes. For real, this is an example of peaches from the garden, as well as some grapes, but I have as well a lot of berries of any kind. So I really like that. Salads, you've seen that in a previous one. So yeah, it does really work. It's not fully perfect, but it really does a job. I should change now the 2 years for like, I don't know how many years it's now working and having all the different upgrades, but the sprinkler system, I haven't changed. I mean, I've done like 4 upgrades, major ones, almost no change. Just work when it works, it's working. I mean, like with Azure IoT, Edge, the deployment, the container, and the rest, and the stuff that it's back up, it's like just all nice, all good. And I have a lot of marmalade for the winter. Sometimes shit happen. So like just a storm at the reason for some of the sensors. So unfortunately, and it's one of the reasons I move as well for cable. But it's good learning. That you have to buy like those proper boxes that are very well made for bad weather. And it was quite fun to just basically build that, have that, and the interesting part is that even if it was wet, the charger here was still working. The battery was dead, the rest was dead, but the charger was working. Anyway, my last hack was to integrate. So I have Velux. Velux is a brand for the window you have on the roof, and they have remote controls and they have boxes as well that you can connect to your network with some API to be able to pilot those. The thing is that this stuff was costing like 300 euros or something like that. Like I don't know how many pounds that is, but anyway, you can make the math. And I said like, well, not just like the remote control, right? I mean, I just simulate the press on the button. So I did it. It's on my as well on my GitHub with everything. I made a video recently for .NET nanoFramework. So it's using ESP32, MQTT, This one is not connected to Azure. It's just connected to my Velux, to my home assistant using MQTT, and that's about it. So it's you can do a lot of things like well, it's fun. I have, of course, next step in my project. A lot of them. Continue some of migration of some of the non.NET nanoFramework things that I still have. Very few. Continued integration with Home Assistant, of course, and Azure. I want to add like more sensors in the garden. I still have some, but like UV ones, I don't have that. And for the last, 3 years, I have like gas sensor. I even want the driver for .NET IoT. Still no time to plug them anywhere, But I need to do that, and better manage the storage as well. I'm storing too many things in my SQL server. It's just not needed. But at least like in a real project, I have a backlog of things I want to do. But the most important is to really to have fun, really to have fun and try to have new technologies, play with that, not play only with .NET. You've seen I've been using Node, I've been using Arduino, I've been using other things just to understand how complicated it is in the real world with different languages. One more thing. I like wine. Yeah, I have a full basement. I have a few bottles, and I had a challenge. Oh, by the way, this is the marmalade, like the homemade marmalade that I'm making. No joke about that. And you can see here on some of the bottles some QR codes. And the reason is because I was managing my cellar like that. Excel file printed, and every time someone was taking a bottle, you change the number, and at some point, I don't even know, what it was. So I had like a lot of issues with the inventory and how to keep that and how to make that working. So at some point, I decided to use just a phone. At that time, long time ago, who remember those marvelous Windows phones? To use. It works with any phone. Like it works with the Windows phone, of course, but it works with any kind of phone that can read a QR code, have an internet access, and of course a browser. So
we miss Windows Phone. Everyone misses Windows.
I miss. Big time. Still things that were in there that are not there, like the unified calendar as a tile on your stuff. Just come on. I loved it, and still not there. Unified contacts, still not there. Social media in WordPress, still not there. Wow. Anyway, so works on any phone, but I said why not to use a QR code? And in one day, it was the 26th of December. I will remember that date. Just started to code, make my site, the backend, the stuff, the QR code, everything, and it just worked. It was like a bit more than a day of coding, few hours to create the blog post to explain that, and then a long time for the inventory. In terms of architecture, it's quite simple. It's just a web app running in Azure, just ASP.NET, MVC, Entity Framework, SQL database to store the data. And then, of course, it's secured. If you connect to the website, if you can manage the QR code, you can see the list of bottles because I'm doing quite a lot of demos. But if you try to change anything, it will ask for a login and password. So that's about it. Everything is HTTPS. In terms of reporting, I've been using Excel. I've been using Power BI as well. And of course, you can scan a bottle, and it's just a URL. So you just use this beautiful way of documenting something. Some BI on it. This is from 2015. So I drank 210 bottles. I was not alone. Just to make it clear, the orange lines are the weekends, the blue lines are during the week. Don't know what happened in September here. Most likely I had a couple of friends over the week. But usually it's over the weekend where I drink more. And interestingly enough, when I drink a lot of bottles, or I open a lot of bottles, for a few days, for some reasons, I don't drink anything. Maybe I'm traveling with just, I don't know. But you can do You can do some stuff in there, and you know when I'm showing as well about. So very interesting BI that you can do just looking at your wine consumption. I mean, not the consumption bottles you open, but looking at that like it's almost a bottle per day. And of course, the cellar is connected. This one was with an ESP 8266, recently migrated to .NET nanoFramework as well, connected to Azure IoT Hub. And I can ask about the temperature. So I think, I don't have a screen capture for that one, but same stuff. I can ask the bot, what temperature is it? And it will send me the temperature, humidity inside, outside, etc. So it will make it in a nice way as well. It's connected both to Home Assistant and to Azure IoT to really get the integration with the bots. So that was for a large part of the journey. IoT project can be very quickly complex. Security, connectivity, designing your own sensors, updating the sensors over time, keeping them secure, transferring the data, cleaning the data, getting insight, like having something useful with them. So it can start to be very, very, very quickly. But with the Microsoft technology, what I've learned is that, especially with Azure, you make things very easy. I've seen the evolution before IoT Hub and after IoT Hub. With IoT Hub, you manage a device, you deploy the containers, like all those scenarios, which look like science fiction when I started to connect, became reality in very few years. And that's what I'm using every day with my customers as well. Like we're using those technologies, work like a charm. It's not perfect, nothing is perfect, huh? But it just works and it just solves like really problems that I had in the past and I don't have anymore. If I have a bug on something, I just redeploy my container, update my deployment, and boom, no touch, nothing, just works. So it can be quite smooth, but careful. Project can be very complex. You have to take care of the device, the infrastructure, the cloud, the connectivity, the data part, and the insights. That's about it. All the code and some of the very old articles are very old. I mean, like 10 years old ones are available on my GitHub IO, my blog, and everything what is more recent is on my github.com/Ellerbach. I thought I updated this slide because it's not really where you want to start today. It's more like I wanted to put like the nanoFramework one. But anyway, I mean, like that's about it. So I guess it's kind of the end of the talk. So not sure if you have a question, Pete, for me.
Oh, all the questions. That was really good. Firstly, thank you. I think I need to add you to my favorite IoT maker / developer / that's yeah, it mirrors a lot of the stuff that I enjoy about IoT. I mean, obviously, you get both sides of it in your role, I guess, because you've obviously got that love of actually playing with IoT and learning about IoT, and then you get the professional side. So that those two things together, that synergy works quite well, I guess, in your role.
Yes, playing myself with all those things on the devices, connecting them manually, building the hardware, keep me honest, and keep me learning as well the complexity of that. Like, and what I say always to my team is that every time we have an IoT project, this is the most complex stuff we can do. Nothing is more complex than that. You have things on a network protected. You have firewalls. You have to connect that. You have to get connected to the cloud. You have to secure all of that physically and software. I mean, like hardware and software way. You have to clean the data, treat the data, store the data, process the data. Honestly, give me another complex project. Nothing else, right? I mean, like it's really the most complex stuff you can do, and you have to have like those bidirectional communication, and you have to get that, and you have to make sure that it's reliable. You have to make sure it's always scaling. You have to, wow. And when you deploy like thousands and thousands and thousands of devices, you better to have like make sure the things are working. So I really like to take it from the device side and go up to the end, up to the data. because it goes from every stage has its own complexity. Every stage has its own challenges. But there is always a way you can solve all of that, and that's.
You're definitely right. It touches. So, I mean, I think, and I found this again recently through because I've just moved roles, and the misunderstanding about IoT being about the device.
Yeah.
People forget that first letter stands for internet, and without that, you've got OT, which is fun, but you're not going to do a great deal without that. And so that's that blue square there.
Yeah.
And, hugely complex part of this equation. But look, you've got 3 more squares to this equation to the right of that.
Exactly.
And this is obviously where Microsoft are focusing their energy. They're not really focusing their energy on devices. Device manufacturers are focusing their energy on that.
Yeah. The device can be anything, honestly. The big value is in there.
Yeah.
Now we try to make that as well easier. If you take the nanoFramework for any C# developer or any developer anyway, I mean, like easy to debug, easy to deploy, easy to maintain, easy to connect to Azure, and I mean a lot of easy stuff. If you look at the Azure IoT Edge pattern and being able to deploy those containers on small gateway or even small devices running those workloads, it's pure paradise, right? So we've solved some of the device issues. If you look more into details, there are as well like Azure SDK, device SDK that allows to update as well a device over the air and things like that. So we've been working and we are still working on this side. But people have a connected watch and so what? Like, I mean, it's not really what I call IoT.
Exactly. I mean,
it's a T, but nothing else.
This is it. Hi, Rod. You're a little bit late, but you've joined the conversational part, so there's still a lot of value here to be had. You can catch up on the video on YouTube, absolutely. If you look on the Not IoT Twitter, you'll be able to catch up on that part there. Because before I take over all of the questions, Kazista, did you have a question about anything you saw there? Maybe not. But by all means, oh no, hold on. I know why that is. Wait. There you go. Now you can actually unmute yourselves. Apologies for that. Kazista's got to go. But absolutely. Come again, Kazista. And hi, Rod. Apologies. I'd selected the security setting to not let people unmute themselves. So that's what that was.
Yeah, sorry I'm late.
That's all right. You've joined the conversation. So
I've only just got in.
That's okay.
Will it be on YouTube, the meeting tonight?
Yep, it already is. Yeah, so you'll be able to catch up on there.
So you can watch time 2 or time 3, and then you can catch up the conversation in about.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
thank you.
With my Franglish, I think like time 1 will be enough. I mean, like more than that.
Your English is very good. It's way better than my French, I can tell you that. So
I call that Franglish. It's like French words saying in the English way and make it nice.
Yeah, that's good. Obviously, you're perfectly placed to answer this question. What do you see coming down the roadmap from Microsoft in the IoT space? I suppose that's an open-ended question, but as a person that I class myself as a maker as well as an IoT specialist, is there anything that they're going to do to help the maker side of the community? And I know we've got folks like Jen Fox who are concentrating on that, but what do you see coming?
Well, a few things. They are the cloud side and just more focus on Azure IoT and more patterns for people who want to deploy on gateways and fat gateways and better managing device. Like all these continue to evolve. Like you can see that. You see recently service like DPS. It's device provisioning service in Azure. So that will make the magic of getting you to an Azure IoT hub, wherever it is, closest to you, available or whatever, without having to touch the device. Like you just put like the key generic URL and you're good to go. So I mean, like it's amazing. Those kind of things are amazing. On the device side, there are still a lot of work on the device side. I mean, on the SDK, obviously with .NET IoT. And .NET nanoFramework. I mean, .NET IoT is Microsoft driven, but we have community members We have committee members with the right of let me put just the first slide, because I was supposed to put those URL at the end, but .NET IoT, and so anything that will run a CPU with ARM32, ARM64, X whatever, 86, 64, even Mac, it's working. So you can use that without any issue, and move my camera. I've moved a lot of things in there. The idea is to facilitate for .NET developers as well the ability to do IoT on large devices, like that, like Raspberry Pi style, like CPU style. And then the .NET nanoFramework effort, even if it's a community effort, there is a large support from Microsoft. Okay, the .NET team has been super helpful in helping. In this case, I say us, but I'm both on Microsoft and on the community side, but us as nanoFramework, a couple of issues we had. Every time there is a new version of Visual Studio, there are edge cases and stuff like that. They've been responding like that, like all of them, super fast. So there is a great support. We've been aligning the API between .NET and nanoFramework and .NET IoT. So if you write code for your Raspberry Pi, but then you want to run it on ESP32, a little bit of transformation. Depending on how addict you are to generics, you may have to transform slightly bit more or to link. But all up,
different NuGet packages, I'd say.
Yeah. All up, it's very, very minimal. We have few articles as well that are on both sides and on the official Microsoft documentation to explain how you can connect both to Azure IoT with Raspberry Pi or a nanoFramework device, the difference of the code, what's similar, what you can use, and things like that. Shared projects are working as well. So, and a large part of .NET nanoFramework, when it comes to the debug, to the Visual Studio extension, to the test framework, is using shared project, because like if you have a class that needs to be on both sides, use just share project. It just works. So there is a great support here, and the great support from the Azure team as well. Mention that I've been writing an Azure library to connect to Azure IoT for nanoFramework. I had great support as well from the team for a few edge questions and things like that, for visibility as well. And that drove like as well good discussion in the Azure team all up. So that's on the device side from Microsoft perspective on .NET. Now, if you enlarge on .NET, there is Azure Sphere. There is still some effort on some hardware elements. I cannot comment too much on some other project, but there are a lot of things happening on the device side as well. And we continue to support the different languages, different platforms. There is a great C native SDK for Azure IoT, which does bring a lot of cool stuff as well with device update and so on. So Azure RTOS, if I want to mention as well a real-time OS, I should not forget about that one. So quite a lot of things as well on the device side.
I like it. Rod, what is it? What area are you in? I think you've been to a couple of these meetups before. I seem to recognize you.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm a retired engineer, so what I do now, I just do for fun.
Yeah, good.
But I'll tell you what, I'll just tell you a story today. If there's any big database software engineers out there, I'd just love to see them sort the NHS out.
Yeah.
The reason I'm late in tonight is I'm on holiday at Ambleside.
Oh, okay.
I live in York, but we're over Ambleside at the moment, and I've got a friend with me, and she's had quite a serious health problem with her eyes, and we had a bit of an emergency yesterday. I rang York to find out what we should do, and they said go to Barrow-in-Furness Hospital, and we got good care, but they had no clue, no access to her records or anything. The NHS is just needs bringing to 21st century as far as data is concerned. You know, we've got the DVLA. They know everything about our car tax, our registration, our MOT, our insurance. They've got it off to a T, whereas the NHS, one area has no access to the records of any other area. What an opportunity for somebody who knows about big databases. That's not me, but there must be somebody out there can sort them out.
Cosmos DB. Although, to be fair, that's not really, it's not really big data in that respect, is it? We're talking about there. It'll be probably quite relational data, that. So
exactly, yes.
Talking about talking to teams, Laurent, do you have any interactions with the Percept team? Because obviously there's some hardware there that's been developed, but as far as I can work out, that we can't actually get any access to like drive GPIO on that hardware or anything. Is there any plans, do you think, in the pipe work to allow us to be able to interact a bit more in depth for that?
So I don't know. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't have much discussions with them. I had with some other teams like the Sphere team, and yeah, I mean, like you may have some support for nanoFramework coming in Sphere, for example, and because some customers require that. So that discussion with the team, and that may come or may not come, but no, I don't know for Percept. That was another one. Yes, I forgot about it. You have like start to have a lot of things on the device side.
What about general growth? Are you seeing? I mean, obviously we see the reported growth of IoT generally. Are you seeing that professionally through Microsoft as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I'm working a lot with manufacturing customers, automotive customers. And there is a big trend of connecting the factories. I mean, connected factory all up. And there are multiple challenges here. It's like the PLCs are all different, PC UA communication, and how to transform that, and how you can get some insight from that. But a couple of engagement over the last 2 years, and one very large one with a very large car manufacturer to really migrate, and I mean all their efforts centrally using Azure, connecting the devices, and quite large project. And we have a lot like that. We have a lot of customers, a lot of teams working with them. It's always the same pattern. It's about first they want to connect to be able to better understand, better calculate their OEE overall, whatever. I mean, just I don't remember the acronym, but it's how much the machine is used compared to the full theory. So some of the downtimes are due to the fact that people are not working, for example, or there is a problem, maintenance, etc. So to better understand, being able to compare the factories, being able to understand, where are the best practices, how you can learn from those practices. And for that, we need those data. Believe it or not, but most of the customers are still using some Excel reporting, manual stuff, etc. Not because they don't want to do it, just because it costs quite some money to connect. It's very complex. Again, like when you look at the data, the connection, the rest. So now you have to imagine that you have to connect to a machine. You want to get the data. You want to clean them, and ultimately you want as well to be able to pirate them back, just not get the insights. Okay, because you may want to adjust live at some point with some AI or some elements, raise some alerts and stuff like that. So all those projects are very complex, and they have thousands and thousands and thousands of machines. The last customer I've been working with, they want in the next 3 years to connect 20,000 machines with hardware. Okay, all connected to the cloud, and you're managing that, etc.
Yeah, the management of all of those. That's the hard. I mean, you don't want to go into your IoT hub and see 20,000 devices.
You'll do that. You'll do that quite easily, and you can play with layers, etc. That scales quite nicely. Actually, you can maybe not in one Azure IoT hub, depending on how many messages you want to send, depending on what you need. But no, that will work actually quite nicely. we have customers connecting literally millions of devices.
Yeah. It's the management of it after that. I mean, obviously,
yes.
yeah, you can physically do
so
it.
You won't manage that. You won't manage that in the UI, in the Azure UI. No.
Yeah.
Okay. But you may use DPS. You may have your own UI, provision the date, the machines. You usually need a few more elements out of that, because you want to know in which factory it is, so that it can scale up with the reporting. So kind of an asset registry, if I can set like a meta asset registry on top of Azure IoT Hub, but you want to use the DPS and Azure IoT Hub mechanism for the data, the deployment, the management, stuff like that. And that does scale really nicely to, I mean, not to the roof. There is a limit for everything, but like really thousands. That's it's been built for that. So
yeah, it's the UI element of this that's other than IoT Central, and obviously I've got questions on that as well. But yeah, managing the UI element, you don't want to do this in the portal when you've got 20,000 devices and all of the reporting you want to do on that. Again, I don't think you'd want to do that directly in time series insights or something like that, Stream Analytics. You're going to have to develop your own.
And in the project we've been working, you need ways to split that in small parts, give the ability for people in the factory with roles to manage their own devices, set up their own devices. I mean, setting up a OPC UA machine when it's all different. If you don't have the knowledge, you cannot do that. Okay, and someone's not really far from that, no idea. Okay, so you need to give the ability to do those kind of things, to control that, to manage that, to update the machine. At the same time, centrally, you want to make sure that it's provisioned in the right place, that the person has the right permission, that you cannot just delete it from the hub or whatever. I mean, like you have to take care of all those elements on top. So you need and there is no one single answer for all the customers. So IoT Central is very nice for specific use cases. You can extend that. Usually you won't take it just like that and that's it. You'll extend it for your own needs. But there is already some of those elements. The registry makes very transparent. All what is used behind you don't need. Azure Plug and Play is a nice thing as well. If you have all the same kind of devices, you can use that so that it gives you the ability to have a better data analysis, better interaction with the devices as well. If you have different classes and so on, it's not really plug and play like a driver, but it does provide a couple of benefits as well. I mean, that's supported as well in the nanoFramework, by the way, in the lib. You can have it there.
Geez, yeah, I mean, there's every customer is going to have to create their own solution to that problem. Essentially, you're right.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just IoT Central is a great. It's a sort of like this is how you can do it, but you're right. There's specific use cases that tackles. Do you have much interaction with the IoT Central team where you are as well? Or
yes, absolutely. And there are other approaches that we may work on as well, depending, because not everyone may need everything. That does not work nicely if you have just CUA devices, etc. So you have different needs depending on different customers. And the manufacturing one, automotive one are quite specific for that. So there are a couple of approaches that we are trying to tackle and to understand, work with the product team, build something that, of course, has to be customizable, because everyone understands that one size will not fit all because of all those different factories. But in a journey, making something that is a starter kit, you can start, you can extend, you can reduce, you can adjust, and making you gain in time. So that's really what we are doing as well with our team now in our organization, for those focusing on that and trying to crack what's on the back. And because there are still millions of devices in the industry, millions and millions and millions of devices in the industry to connect and to manage properly.
Yeah. So kind of it's good in a few ways, isn't it? I mean, obviously it's going to keep you in a job and keep you interested for a long time, and it's constantly evolving as well. So it's not like it's going to burn itself out. This thing's not going to go away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Geez. Yeah, it's a big space.
Absolutely.
Rod, I've posted the link in the chat there to the YouTube recording, should you need it there, just in case you find it hard to find my particular channel. So if you,
it's brilliant. Yeah.
So that'll
Thank you.
On there. Did you have any? Well, you've not watched it, so you won't have any specific questions about what Laurent's been talking about. But do you have any IoT-based questions for him at all? Or
no, not really at the moment. I'll certainly watch the YouTube, and because I haven't done anything much with IoT, but I do quite a lot with sort of Arduino control systems, doing this, that, and the other.
Yeah,
so
OT.
I think
you said earlier.
It's the T part. But you missed the IO, which is an important one. Watch the video. If you have questions, just reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer your one.
Thank you. Yeah, great.
All right, well, we'll call it a night at that point. But Laurent, thank you so much for coming along and speaking. For those folks on YouTube, thank you for watching. And we'll be back after the summer break. I'll stop streaming. So thanks very much.